your own sensory processing and maybe other people's that you may know, family members or your child with autism. But everybody processes sensory information, everyone. So everybody does it differently, and everybody likes certain things and doesn't like certain things. So we're going to kind of explore some of that stuff today. I hope to have some time at the end for you guys to try out some of these things. I'm going to teach you a few techniques. I want it to be a really hands-on experience. I want you to walk away with some strategies. So if at the end you don't have anything to walk away with, please tell me, and I hopefully will give you something new that you don't already know. I put some peppermints on the table. Peppermint is an alerting a smell and taste. So if you get sleepy or I'm boring, pop a peppermint, and I'll try to liven things up a little bit. So I guess just getting started. My name is Mary Hopper. Some people know me as Mary Peterson. I got married this year, so my name did change. I'm an occupational therapist at Mercy. I've worked there for 4 years, and for 2 of those years I was a full-time pediatric occupational therapist there. And so I dealt a lot with kids with sensory processing disorder, kids with autism, other kids with disabilities. So for 2 years I dealt with this every day in my job. So I feel like I have some good experience. I tried some things that didn't work. I've tried things that really do work. And like I said, what works for some people doesn't work for others. So we'll kind of explore that. Just a little background on my education. I am an occupational therapist. I have a master's degree in occupational therapy. I got my bachelor's degree from Luther, and I got my master's degree from St. Kate's up in St. Paul. So, and I currently am not working full-time at Mercy. I am PRN there, which means I work as needed. Some family stuff going on, so I've kind of cut back on some hours there, and I can be more involved here too to do that. So. And then some of my experience, I've kind of touched on that a little bit. As I was in grad school for the 3 years, I was a personal care attendant for a boy who has autism, pretty severe autism, and I was with their family every evening after I was done with class, and I really learned a lot about family dynamics and just that it's just not easy to have a child with autism, and just being there in their family. They welcomed me in. I was kind of part of their family, and just an amazing experience, and they're still near and dear to my heart. So some objectives today. What I want you to leave with, like I said, the main thing is I want you to walk away with a few strategies, ideas on ways to make your life a little bit easier, or to make your child's life a little easier, or someone in your life that you know is struggling with sensory processing difficulties. So we'll talk about what is sensory processing. I'll define that for you. We'll talk about what our sensory systems are. You know a lot of them, but there might be a few that you're not familiar with. We're going to talk about what sensory processing disorder is, and then what does sensory processing disorder feel like. So we'll kind of talk, I'll give some examples of what that might feel like to be in that position. So we're going to try some sensory. So I want everybody to stand up. Everybody stand up, and all you have to do is move. I don't care how you move, just move. So dance or bark, you should walk around the room. Come on.
Let me see you do the monkey. Let me see you do the monkey. I said do the monkey.
Keep moving, guys.
Let me see you do the hippo. Let me see the hippopotamus.
Everybody can sit down. So that was just an example of moving your body a little bit before you learn something. So I like to tell parents when they come into the clinic, if their kid is having trouble focusing on things in school, I tell them maybe doing just 10 jumping jacks before they sit down, or listening to some music and moving your body. Anything to get the blood flowing a little bit. It's really easy to jump up and down 10 times, and now we're gonna sit down for dinner, okay? Some kids just need to move, and so giving them that input before they even have to sit down is taking the need to move out, because you're already giving that to them. So how does everybody feel? How does your body feel? Do you feel more alert? Do you feel silly? It's okay to feel silly, but it is really important. You know, we hear all the time, exercise, we need to exercise, we need to move our bodies. It is really important not just to be physically fit, but it's also important when you're moving your body, you're connecting to your brain, your coordination, you're planning your movements, and then listening to music, you're only getting more of that coordination. So there's a lot to be said about moving your body. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about sensory processing. What does it mean? So, I kind of divided into 3 parts to sensory processing. So the first part is you're taking in sensory input, and by sensory input I mean anything in your environment, the lights, my voice, the smells in this room, anything, the clothes on your skin. Okay, so you're taking that in through your sensory systems, which we're going to get to in just a second. So for example, my nose smells, okay, my eyes see, those are the common things that we think of. Second, so you take in this information. Second, your brain is going to process that information. So that happens in your brain. It decides, okay, this is important. I need to listen to her voice because I'm trying to learn something. So my ears take in the sound, my brain processes that, and then my body responds. That's the third step. You're nodding your head. You're knowing what to do. Yes?
Well, with my daughter, she's started EMDR. And because of the processing part of some bad things. And they just did that introduction, and when you were saying the voice and everything else, to stay with the voice and stuff. And
Yep.
because that's the problem, she's not processing. She
Right.
doesn't process a lot of
Yep.
things.
And some people's brains can't decide what is important to process. So while most of you are listening to my voice, some might be listening to the hum of the lights. Does everybody hear that the lights are coming? Didn't hear them before I pointed it out, but some of that input is just too much, and they can't get past what they hear to focus on what they really need to be focusing on. So that's just an example of kind of how sensory processing works. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the term sensory integration. And so I want to kind of define what the difference between sensory integration is versus sensory processing. So sensory integration is really the theory behind taking in that sensory information. And it was developed by Jean Ayers, who is a PhD, but she's also an occupational therapist. I have her book here. We were required to read it in school, and I have kept it. This is actually one of 2 books that I've kept from school because it was a really good book. It goes through all of the sensory systems. It is for parents. I mean, parents can read it and understand it. It's not just for clinicians. So this is a good book. You're welcome to look at it afterwards. Write down, the title. I do recommend that book. So that's sensory integration. It's the theory about that, and it's really kind of tricky because there hasn't been a ton of research on sensory processing disorder or sensory integration, but she is one of the leading researchers. And to be honest with you, I don't know if there's current research out there now. I've been out of school for 6 years, so I need to maybe look into that a little bit, but I think that they are doing more studies as it's becoming, more people know more about it. So. So sensory processing, like I said, is your body and brain taking in that sensory information and doing something with it, responding to it, okay? So we have sensory systems. I think I listed 7 sensory systems, and a lot of them are kind of what we know, but there are a few that you might not know or aren't familiar with. The first one is auditory or sound, which I've given a few examples about. The second is visual or sight seeing. Proprioception is one you might not know about. It's your input from your joints. So your joints have receptors that send messages to your brains, or your brain, telling your brain where your body is in space. And so when I go to lean on this, my elbow joint and my wrist joint are sending a message to my brain saying, hey, you better activate those muscles so she doesn't fall down. So that's really important to recognize, because there are a lot of kids that don't know where their body is in space. They don't realize that they're standing on top of somebody else, or that you know, they don't have those coordinated movements. They can't jump rope or ride a bike. Yes, they can't. Their brain isn't connecting with what their body is supposed to be doing. Okay. Gustatory or taste. That's a pretty common one. That's a fancy term for it. I will just use taste from now on, but I wanted you to know what that term was. Tactile or touch. And that's just on the surface of your skin, what you're feeling. Olfactory or smell. And then the last one is vestibular or movement, for your sense of balance. And that's in your inner ear is your sense of balance. And anywhere your head is positioned in space is letting your body kind of, that's that sensation, knowing where your head is. You know, when I rock back and forth, I give myself a vestibular input. Or if I spin around in circles really fast, that's giving vestibular input. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about the sensory systems or sensory processing, and what that means?
With sensory, like for the taste and stuff, my daughter, she's 14 now, and we're going through a lot of GI doctor visits down in Rose City. And we've always had trouble with the GI problems, but the eating of food. I mean, you say, we've talked like at home, and I know in one of our other meetings here that we never had to use like picture cards with her when she was younger, but now, with a lot more stuff, when she's getting more excitable and stuff, and being in social situations, she'll just force eat. She eats and eats until she vomits sometimes at night. Is that one of the sensory?
So I think, I mean, I don't know your daughter, and I haven't seen her do that, but it sounds like some of that might be anxiety related.
Well, yeah, because she's pregnant.
Yeah, which I'm going to talk about kind of that in just a few slides from now. So it could be that she's looking for some kind of sensation, or like I said, it's just kind of a reaction to that anxious feeling of, oh my gosh, I'm stressed out kind of thing, which I'm going to talk about in just a second. Okay, so how does the brain process? I'm going to talk a little bit about the sensory profile. That's what I am most familiar with. And if you get one out. Some of you have heard about this. This is a questionnaire, a caregiver questionnaire, so a lot of times we'll have parents fill it out. It's 125 questions, and it takes you through the different sensations, so auditory, and then it asks you questions like, is distracted or has trouble functioning if there is a lot of noise around, okay? And then the parent would write always, almost always, always, never, and then we would score that and get a profile of the child, okay? So, and there's a lot of different ways to score it and get different ideas off of it, and I use this as a jumping board to, okay, this is the profile, this is what your child is, or how your child is processing these things. Now what can we do to help them with that? So this is a really handy tool that we use, and they do use it at Mercy, which I'll get to at the end. I'll tell you kind of if you're interested in having your child assessed by a therapist. I can give you the name of the therapist there, and she does do this. So the sensory profile, the main things that I'm going to take off of the sensory profile tonight are the thresholds. Okay, so I want to talk about the different thresholds for response. So I talked about you bring in that sensory information, your brain decides what to do with it, so it decides, so I guess I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So let's just talk about high thresholds. So if you have a high threshold for response, you need a lot of input. So this is where you see, and that, in other words, you have a poor registration. So your body, your brain isn't registering the sensory input, so you're needing a lot of it to get a reaction. And this is where you see the sensory seeking behaviors. So the throwing yourself on the floor or at the wall, trying to get that sensation. So they're seeking, or some of the self-stim behaviors, there might be other reasons for it, but some of the noise making, they're seeking those sensations. Sometimes kids really want to just be touched really hard, squeezed really hard. They're seeking that comfort, that sensation. So, and then on the opposite end of the spectrum is the low threshold, and that's needing very little input for a response. So hypersensitivity, kids that if you touch them, they go off. They just don't want to be touched. Or loud noises, or even maybe the sound of somebody's voice or something that it's just too much for them to handle. Socks. We were talking about where do you find socks without seams. Sometimes, tags in clothes are just too much, or the feeling of clothes on their skin is too much. So with that sensory sensitivity comes that sensation avoiding. So they are doing everything they can to avoid these situations that are making them very uncomfortable. So those are kind of two of the ways that the sensory profile what it does is you take visual, for example, it will say, okay, your child with vision or visual stimuli is sensitive, so you want to be careful. But to confuse things, it's a lot of times kids are sensory seeking in one sensory system and avoiding in another. So it kind of, they can be on the spectrum, and one day it can be they're seeking, and the next day they could be avoiding. Okay, so it's not black and white, cut and dry, but a lot of times if you find something that the kid likes and is motivating for the child, then you can kind of alleviate some of the stress that goes along with it. So, all right, so where am I here? Okay, what is sensory processing disorder? So I just found some facts that I wanted to share with you all. So now we're talking about the actual disorder, sensory processing disorder, which is diagnosed by a physician. We don't see it a lot, and we struggle with it in the clinic a lot because insurance companies don't want to pay for it. They don't want to pay for treatment for it because there hasn't been a lot of research saying that it's a real thing. Well, it's real. So a lot of times as therapists, we are able to get payment for it because it affects self-care things. Kids aren't able to be involved in the school activities they need to be in, their home life, and they're not able to function. And so that's how OT can help kids with SPD. So some facts about SPD. It is a complex disorder of the brain. I talked about I broke it down to 3 different ways the input comes in and the brain processes it. It's much more complicated than that. I'm not going to get into the details of where it's processed in the brain, and it's got a lot of overlap, but it is complex. And like I said, everybody is different. Everybody's brain processes differently. So I also want people to realize that it's not just in children with autism. It is in adults. It's in typical functioning children that you see that sometimes they have some sensory things. I think I understand the sensory stuff because I myself like certain sensory things and don't like other sensory things. So we all have our preferences, but that being said, in some kids, it is a disorder that's affecting their function. So they say that 1 in 20 people may be affected by sensory processing disorder. It is more prevalent in kids with ADHD, autism, and Fragile X, but like I said, you don't have to have a diagnosis for it to be prevalent. They have shown some studies, heredity may be one cause of the disorder. They don't really know other causes of the disorder. I mean, I'm sure you could guess some things, but I'm not really exactly sure what causes it. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about the nervous system. So in kids with SPD or people with SPD, their nervous systems have been shown to be affected, okay? So we have two types of nervous systems. We have a sympathetic nervous system and we have a parasympathetic nervous system. And eyes glaze over. I want you to understand that the sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight, okay? That's if you're in a threatening situation, your body is automatically, your heart rate is gonna go up, you're gonna be on the defense, okay? Your muscles tighten, you're ready for anything, okay? Your parasympathetic is the exact opposite. It's your rest and digest. So you're calm, you're relaxed, your heart rate slows, you're digesting your food, all of that. So this helps me kind of, and I might be inferring here, but this is kind of how I think about it. Kids that have sensory processing difficulties spend a lot of their days in this fight or flight response. Their sympathetic nervous system is always on. Very rarely do they come down to this rest and digest, which makes me kind of infer a little bit, a lot of these kids that have SPD, autism, ADHD, have gut issues, have digestive problems. So if they're always on this stress, heightened, something's gonna happen to me, I feel like there's a connection there. I might be inferring, but I think that there might be something going on with that. So just keep that in mind. I mean, if you have, if you know somebody that struggles with that, even just helping them calm their bodies, just trying to come down from whatever might be stressing them. And, you know, hopefully from this presentation you'll learn a little bit more about what might be stressing them. So, and then the last thing I have to add that in there, that they have shown that some research shows that OT is effective in helping kids with sensory processing disorder, which is kind of cool. So. Okay, so I just want to talk a little bit more about sensory processing disorder. There could be three areas, and I kind of already talked about this a little bit, but three ways that, or three problem areas where the processing could go wrong, okay? So number one, the brain doesn't receive the information. So that could be that someone's eyes, they have physical damage to their eyes or their ears. So the brain, or the optic nerve, or I'm stating the obvious, but the message isn't getting to the brain. They're not taking in that input, okay? The second is the sensory messages received aren't integrated. So that's something inside the brain, okay, that they're getting mixed up with everything else going on in there. They're not able to decide what information is important and what isn't, so they're not able to even figure out what they need to be processing. And number three, the messages get in, they're integrated, they're processed, but they're not processed, or they're not connecting with the other sensory messages, and then you get a result in an inappropriate behavior, or something that we wouldn't typically see with that input. So, kind of already touched on that a little bit, but that's kind of the three areas where you might have a problem with the processing. So some symptoms of sensory processing disorder. I kind of talked about these a little bit too. Shut down to stimuli. So you're bombarded, you're overwhelmed by the sensory stimuli, your body shuts down, you can't do it anymore. So you might see kids avoiding situations, or not participating in gym class or whatever because they've shut down, or they're not listening to what you're saying. They can't take in what you're trying to cue them to tie their shoe, tie your shoe, tie your shoe. Well, they can't hear you anymore because they've already shut down. It's too late, okay? So a lot of times that happens, where we think the more we tell them to do something and cue them, the more they're gonna do it, and a lot of times like I said, it's too late. We talked about the fight or flight behaviors, that's the tantrums, the aggression, the throwing yourself on the floor, anything to survive. I'm threatened, I feel icky, and I'm just trying to do what I need to do to get out of this situation. And so that's where you see some of those behaviors. It's survival mode, and I see a lot of kids that just don't know how to get out of that survival mode. They're just always on edge, waiting for the next thing to happen to them. And just think about how life would be like that. I mean, it just breaks my heart. So, coordination problems. I kind of talked about that with the proprioception. This is where fine and gross motor. So gross motor is those big movements, and fine motor is, handwriting, cutting, all those skills that are expected of us as we develop. Those things might be harder for kids with sensory processing disorder. It could be that proprioception, they don't know where their body is in space. It's hard for them to make that connection. Could be that they're overwhelmed by other sensory information in their environment, that they can't focus on those coordination things that are expected of them. It could be a lot of things. So, like I said, it's not cut and dry, it's not black and white, it's not, okay, you have, you get overwhelmed with auditory, it's all of it all together. So I try to break it up so you can understand what it means, but it's really complex. So you might see delays in speech, language, motor skills, or academic achievement. We talked about not hitting those developmental milestones with coordination, or even just language development. That's something going on in the brain. Motor skills, I talked about the coordination issues, but a lot of our motor planning, or our brain's ability to plan our actions, what we're going to do next, it just happens. We don't think about it, but in these kids, it doesn't just happen, and they do have to think about it. So then they're thinking about that, plus they're trying to forget about that bright light right in their eyes, and your voice telling them to hop over this thing that they don't even know how to begin to do. So I guess I don't have anything else to say about that. So poor organization of behavior. Kids can be impulsive or distractible. Difficulty adjusting to new situations. Like I said, you can get the aggression, withdrawal, scared to fail, or don't want to try anything because they failed before and it's really hard for them to do. So they just don't, and that's the avoiding. They've put up a wall saying, I've already tried this, it was really hard for me, I'm not doing it again. I don't want to fail again. Which then leads into a poor sense of self-concept, poor self-esteem. So these kids that are struggling with not only this processing, this difficulty with processing all of this stuff coming into them, then don't feel good about themselves because they can't participate in gym, because they can't get there, they can't jump rope, or they can't figure out how to ride a bike, or all these other kids are doing it, but they aren't. And kids know, they get it. They get that they're not doing the same thing as their peers. So really, a lot of what my practice was, wow, you can really do this, and then you boost that self-esteem, and you tell them, you provide them the just right challenge, and just give them enough to be successful at it, and challenge them, okay? And you have to kind of play around with that. Not every kid is, every kid is different, so you just got to find what's going to challenge them, yet make them successful, and then keep building on that. So, any questions about that?
Well, something that's difficult for them, and if I push, I want to see her do it, so I push, and she fights back with me, but then I always try to tell her at the end of this, you'll be better. How far do you push?
Good question.
Because you don't want to traumatize them, but you want
Right.
to keep on and just to keep going.
Right.
Let's do 5 minutes more of it.
Right. So, depending on what you're doing or what you're expecting, Can you approach it in a different way? Or can you change the environment to make her more successful?
Well, we've done this year, we've changed schools,
Yep,
big cities.
yep,
We've done that, that's helped big time.
yep,
And rewards, not monetary rewards or anything, but she has an awesome para. But the para will bring other students with that encourage, so,
yep.
yeah.
That's huge, that peer interaction is huge.
Yes.
Huge, huge. And that's how they develop a self-concept of,
Mhm.
you know, how do I interact with others and what do others think of me?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge to develop that. So, you have to, you know, you don't wanna just give in and say, oh, you have, you know, you can't process this, or you're struggling with this, we're not gonna do it. You have to kind of scale back and say, how can I change it to make her successful with
Right.
it? Yep, yep, and it's gonna take some trial and error, so, yep. Okay, any other questions with that? All right, we are going to take a little sensory break, so everybody stand up again. So this is a YouTube video, and maybe some of you have heard of this. It is, if you go to thinkingmoves.com, it is a free, they have like a 3-minute video that's free. It is an app you can get on your phone or your iPad. Thinking Moves, yep. Or you can just Google Me Moves. And it kind of leads you through, so I want everybody to do the movements with the, I'll try to get it full screen here. And it's, the phone is there because I didn't buy the app or anything, so. So you just follow along. example of some coordination movements, some music, you know, just taking a little break when we needed it. How does everybody feel? Better, more awake, alert, energized, so that's free. So I got that off YouTube, but they also, on their website, they have a calming one and one for focus. So, if you're a teacher, it might be something you want to try in your classroom before the kids sit down to focus on a test or something. Or if you're a parent, maybe before bedtime, you do the calming one. Kids really, I've used it in my practice and they really think it's kind of fun, so.
Just, I was a little late, do you have the slides anywhere? Cause
I don't, but I am more than happy, we can email them out to people.
Awesome, because we have
Yes.
a meeting at school next Thursday,
Yep.
and I think they need this.
Yep.
So.
Yep. And this is just one that I know of. I know that there is a lot more out there. It's just, this is what I've come across in my practice, so. Okay, so now we're going to take some time and we're gonna talk about each of those sensory systems, and I'm going to give some strategies and ideas, and I have a lot of stuff up here to try. And so I think what I'll do is I'll go through each system, I'll show you what I have, and then once we get through everything, we'll just kind of get up and you guys can try out any of this equipment or whatever you want to do, and we'll just kind of go from there. So auditory, that's obviously what we hear. So some ideas on some things to help combat if noise are too loud. They have these noise reducing headphones, and so if you put them on, it blocks out the noise. I also recommend, you know, a Discman or an iPod or something. This is just what we use at Mercy. Calming music. Classical music is really calming. I guess in here, I didn't even look what was in here. Baby Einstein is in here. A lot of kids like that, that music. Music with 50 to 70 beats per minute. They've shown research that if you listen to music with 50 to 70 beats per minute, it's similar to the heart rate. And so it's calming. It kind of brings you down. And
The EMDR paddles.
yes, yep.
Mm-hmm.
What did she just say?
The
EMDR, it's a therapy.
Yep.
It's a, the fuzzies, huh?
EMDR.
EMDR. It's for processing. And they're fuzzy paddles, they use on kids, and the therapist holds the controller. And you can turn it up high or low, and she listens to Japanese music and the beat. That's what she does for relaxation. And it's the beat, and it gets her to process things better.
Helps you organize. That's really what it's all about. Giving kids this sensory input to help them kind of organize their systems, okay? These are, we're missing the cover because it's used quite a bit, but these are also 2 CDs that I recommend. We listened to one of the songs from Say Good Day. It's Genevieve Jareb is her name. I think she's an OT as well. I think she's from Australia or somewhere out of the country, but these 2 CDs we get a lot of use out of. She understands the sensory processing, and so a lot of the Say Good Day kind of takes you through, you know, the first song we did was Let Me See You Do the Monkey, and so it has kids up and moving around, and kind of, it has lots of different songs I'll maybe play. I just picked one at random, but.
You got to peel bananas, peel bananas, got to peel bananas, peel bananas, got.
And after the presentation, if you want to listen to some of these, you're welcome to. I think I have both of the CDs on here. So if you're wanting to listen to more of that, if that's something you're interested in. And then avoiding loud noises or things that, startling situations like parades, fireworks, crowds, concerts. So a lot of times just avoiding those situations. Or if you want your child to be involved in those situations, you know, can they wear headphones like this or earmuffs or something that would help them get through it?
My friend's daughter loved parades, and so when it was band festival time, they sat
in a van in a
Yes.
friend's driveway, so she could watch it, but she didn't
Yes.
hear all the noise.
Awesome, awesome. Yep, that's awesome. So there's ways around it. There's definitely ways to get by, so. Any questions about auditory? If you have questions, just holler, okay? All right, so the next one is visual. So, I'm gonna have Christina do the lights. So one thing I like to do, in my practice is we do a lot with flashlights. So automatically turning off the lights, people calm down. A lot of teachers use that as a strategy when their classroom is crazy. They'll just turn the lights off, and that means everybody needs to shape up or be quiet. But sometimes if a kid comes into the clinic and is very kind of off a little bit, the first thing I'll do is I'll dim the lights or I'll turn the lights off, and we'll do some work with the flashlight. I like to use the flashlight because I can still work on handwriting. We can work on writing your name on the wall, or we can lay on the floor and work on the ceiling. I just really like flashlights, and kids love flashlights. I gave my niece a flashlight for Christmas like 3 years ago, and she sleeps with it every single night. So they love flashlights, or they make these little lanterns that are really fun. She has one of those too. So, you know, any type of light, if you can turn the lights off and make it kind of fun. That is if they're not scared of the dark, but you can turn the lights back on, just thank you. So dark dim lights, or dark or dim lights, flashlights, you can draw on the ceilings. They make flashlights too that are red or green or different colors. Those are kind of fun. Christmas lights, this is a great time of year. If kids really like the Christmas lights, you can drive around, look at the Christmas lights. You know, they could have Christmas lights in their room all year round. It doesn't hurt to have, you know, if they like the flashing lights or they like to look at those things, there's no reason they can't have them up in their room all year round. So, lava lamps, so a lot of times you can find those at garage sales now. They're kind of out of, and we're in style now, they're kind of out. So, you know, and fiber optics, those, like these type of things, the lights, they can get kind of spendy. But I do have, I was kind of searching online the other day. There's sensory apps. This one is free. You know, just kind of play with the light. And there's a ton of stuff out there, and some of it's free, some of it costs money. But you can just kind of play with that if your kid really likes lights and looking at the, you know, like even just watching this is kind of cool. It's got, you know, kind of flashes and so. And then to avoid bright lights or the sun or things that are overstimulating to the eyes, sunglasses. Kids can wear sunglasses or cover up their eyes or wear those eye pad or sleep masks, you know, so those type of things. Okay. The next one is tactile. So brushing, some of you may have heard about brushing, which I'm going to go through this slide, and then on the next slide, I'll teach you about brushing and joint compressions, and we'll all have a chance to try it today. So brushing is brushing the skin using a surgical brush like this, and I will explain more about that in just a little bit. Massage, any type of massage to anywhere on your body. Most people like the feeling of massage. Now if you are oversensitive and don't like to be touched, obviously. But a lot of times, massage, the deep pressure massage is more comforting than, you know, just kind of a light touch on your hand. Not always, but light touch can be really alerting. So if you're looking to calm someone down, kind of a deeper, more firm pressure is better. So sensory buckets, those are things you can make out of an ice cream pail or a Tupperware. You can put rice, beans, oatmeal, anything that will fill the bucket, and then you just have sand. You just have the kids stick their hands in it. You can put stuff in it, dig for things, just gives their hands sensation from the things in the bucket. So we have a lot of fun with it. They're messy, but if you do them outside or you just set up a sheet or something and have the kids go to town on it, that's it's really fun. So hand squeezes, that's something I taught Christina to do. Instead of squeezing or pinching someone, we teach kids to put their hands together and squeeze. If they need that sensation or they're needing something, they can do it themselves. We can teach them to just kind of squeeze. Or we put our hands together and squeeze, kind of squeeze together. So we're both getting some sensation. So I know Christina's boys ask for that quite a bit. They want their hands squeezed. So that's just a really easy one to do if you're out in public and you can kind of see, oh, we're gonna have maybe a little meltdown or something's going on. Can I squeeze? Another thing I do is, and I'll get to joint compressions in a minute, but or I tell parents, if you're standing in line for something and you're seeing that we're gonna have maybe a meltdown, if you can stand behind your child, if they're not taller than you, and push down on their shoulders, just kind of ground them, bring them back down. It's okay, you know. A lot of times that grounding, that push, that feeling of security, it's feeling okay, that things are gonna be okay. Textured fabrics, you can use any type of textured fabric. Some feel better than others, but I recommend anything, felt, corduroy, jean material, sweat or terry cloth sweatpant material. You can get all sorts of different kinds of material and use those to rub, kind of like a massage, or you just rub them on the arms, the legs, the back. I love to be rubbed anywhere. I want someone to rub my arm all the time. So I just think that is a good way. And, you know, if you are doing these things with your child, you're taking that one-on-one time with them. It's a special time for you, whether you decide to do brushing or the massage or the fabrics or whatever, but it becomes kind of something that you guys can do together and kind of special, and kids kind of dig that. So shaving cream, that's another really good tactile strategy. I recommend doing it at a table, or if you have a mirror, like in a bathroom or something, that's kind of fun to draw on the mirror or on a wall. Just look out for kids that stick things in their mouth. I've had people eat shaving cream before. So you could use like whipped cream or something like that. Any type of textured food, you know, really, the sky's the limit here, really. I mean, if kids are looking for that tactile, you gotta kind of think outside the box. What would be fun to play in? Would mashed potatoes be fun to play in? And I mean, obviously you don't want to teach them bad habits about eating, but you also kind of want to just give them that input and kind of make it fun. And then vibration, that is a huge one. I have a lot of success with vibration. It's a very calming. This is just one of the vibrators that we have at Mercy, and so it's got. I like the slower speed, but it does ram up to more speed. And a lot of times I'll just kind of hold this on someone's back, you know, just gives them some input, or we'll put our hands on it, we'll put it on the floor, and we'll put one foot on it, or, you know, anything they want to do with it, it is fine. They just wanting that input from the vibration. Sometimes I tell parents, if kids really like that vibration, you'll have to try that out when we're done, because it definitely makes your hands feel different. Tingly, yeah. But, you know, electric toothbrushes, those are a cheaper form of vibration. I mean, I'm sure this was not cheap, but if you're looking for, you know, if kids are needing that input in their mouth, a lot of times, you know, an electric toothbrush is an easy way to try to give them that vibration. Okay, proprioception. Okay, this is good. I'm going to teach you about brushing and joint compressions, but we'll just talk a little bit about the proprioception. So joint compressions, we'll get back to that. Heavy work. So you might have heard that term before. Well, they need heavy work. Well, what does that mean? It means anything that gives their muscles and joints some input. So push-ups, filling a laundry basket full of books and having them push it down the hall, putting books in a backpack and having them wear it. Maybe they're struggling on the bus. Maybe you have their backpacks a little bit weighted, and when they get on the bus, they put they carry their backpack onto the bus, and then they put that weighted backpack on their lap while they're on the bus. Just giving them that input. It's kind of like a weighted blanket, but it's their backpack, so it doesn't look like a weighted blanket. So a couple different weighted, anything weighted, it has a calming effect as long as it's not too weighted, as long as I can get it off. And I think they say about 5% of somebody's weight is enough, so you don't wanna do anything more than 5% of their weight. But there's lots of different weighted, I mean, this is a weighted, ring, I guess. Some kids like to put it on their head, or a lot of times it'll go over their head. They wear it like a necklace, and it just gives their shoulders that input. We've got a bunch of weighted stuff up here. This is just like a weighted, you can wear it around your neck. This hat has some sand in it, so it's a weighted hat. I do warn people to be, if you thinking about getting any of this stuff, be really careful about putting something weighted on your head. You can just try this out. You can wear it for, after this you can try all this stuff, but just wear it for 5 minutes and then take it off and see how your head feels. It feels funny. I did it, I was thinking it would be great for a kid that had, hard to report head control, and I tried it before I put it on him, and I thought, oh my goodness, that's more intense than I thought it was going to be. So just be careful about some of this stuff, but do, try it out when you got a chance to. This is a weighted vest that I had a mother bring in that she made. She took an old fleece, cut the sleeves off, sewed some pockets inside, and put in some Ziploc bags of sand. So, this stuff doesn't have to cost a lot of money. If you know somebody that sews, or if you sew yourself, or probably staple the Ziploc. That's probably something I would do, try to staple them in there. But I'm not the best sewer, but yeah, she sewed the pockets shut with some sand in there. So, and then you can take the sand out too if you need more or need less weight or whatever. So that's just an example of a vest, a weighted vest, and this is a compression vest. So it velcros on, and you put it on tight enough so that it feels like a squeeze or a hug. And then wear it. I do not recommend people wear them all day, every day, because then it doesn't matter that you have it on. Your body's already accustomed to it. It doesn't make a difference. So, but I recommend, if kids are, feeling a little bit, out of sorts or whatever, it's a good way. You put the vest on them for 5-10 minutes. It's a good way for them to kind of come down from whatever was making them out of sorts. So, and then. Yes, we'll skip this for now. Okay, any questions about that? Squishes, bear hugs, a yoga ball is really good. Kids love yoga balls, those big balls. They're good to play with, but they're also good for, I would have kids lay on the floor, and I would take the yoga ball and I would just kind of, you can play around with the pressure too. Some kids really want you to push down on that. I always ask. I never do anything without asking, but if they really want, sometimes kids want your whole, upper body down on there pushing down, but just kind of roll it and then have them roll over on their tummy and roll it on them again. That's a good way to give some sensory input. Using one of those little balls, that's a cheap way too. Or couch cushions, squeeze them in between couch cushions. Okay, the next one is taste. So I put those peppermint things out. Peppermint is an alerting sensation, whether it's smell or taste. Sweet and salty are two tastes, but mostly taste. I don't know a lot about this sensation, but I'm mostly for the oral sensory piece of it, giving your mouth that input. The crunchy and chewy things are going to alert you. So pretzels or chewing gum, anything that you're having to chew a lot. Carrots are another form of, that really crunchy, you're having to chew it a lot. That will often alert people. So I think there's been some studies I've read that if kids are chewing gum when testing, they tend to do better. So if you're in a situation where you're got a piece of gum in your purse and you need your kid to be quiet for 5 more minutes, then maybe you try to get them to chew a piece of gum until it's time to go. So. And then the last one is smells, which is also a very powerful sensation. I brought Oh, I didn't teach about brushing and joint compressions, I'll get to that. I brought some of the essential oils that I own personally and make like cleaners and things out of them, but if you would like to smell any of them after this, you're more than welcome to. I have lavender spray, peppermint spray, and then this is kind of like a cinnamon type spray. Be careful with the essential oil, don't put them on your skin, but you can spray them if you want. Lavender is said to be really calming, and so I'll spray a little lavender on my pillow before I go to bed, just to kind of bring me down a little bit. Lavender and vanilla is a good combo together, and chamomile is also known to be calming. I think, if you want to know a little, I don't know a ton about essential oils, but I do know a few things. I do use them in my daily life. So if you want to know a little bit more about them, you can ask me afterwards. So,
Actually, I talked with someone and they suggested you run them on the foot, on the back of the neck.
Yep. I know that I don't know about them to a great extent, but I know that there's people out there selling essential oils that are like mixes of things. Like, I think it's called doTERRA or Young Living. Have you heard of those? So there's people out there selling essential oils for, to fight infections and, all of those things. And they're putting them on the bottom of their feet or rubbing them on their, skin. But I don't know a ton about that, but that's something if you're looking for alternative things for calming or, you don't want to give your kid meds, you want to look at other opportunities, that's an area that you could maybe look into. The last piece is other strategies. So these are strategies that I found have worked in my clinic. Routine. So consistency is key. You have to keep it consistent. And routine, these kids just really need to know what's going to happen next. And so that's where the schedule comes in, and a picture schedule is what I recommend because we're visual learners. We all, I mean, not everybody is, but most people learn visually. They see something and then they understand it. So this is just an example of a picture schedule or what it could look like. I tell parents, you can keep it really simple. You can, in the morning or at night before the next day, you talk about what's going to happen the next day. You draw a picture of breakfast. You draw a picture of school, you draw a picture of the bus, and you draw a picture of whatever you have at that night, a basketball game or whatever. And then they have a visual, they know what's happening next. I find that takes a little bit of the anxiety out of some of the situations. Even if they don't have control of the situation, at least they know what's going to happen. And then a sensory diet, which is, it's a detailed schedule per se, where we do sensory diets based off of the sensory profile. We do them at Mercy, and we would just ask for kind of a schedule of what a typical day would look like in your house. I know every day is different, and you can't predict things, but we just want a idea, and then we based on what we've seen your child benefiting from, we kind of plug those into your daily routine. So maybe they really like the brushing and joint compression, so before breakfast every day for 3 minutes you do some brushing and joint compression. So we try to give you a schedule of okay, you need a sensory break at 10 o'clock at school, or those type of things. So, and then the last strategy, and I think is probably the hardest for me, but I think is probably the most effective, be calm and be quiet. So the calm is huge because people feed off other people's energy. And the calmer you are in a situation where your child might be overloaded with sensory, the better off it's going to be. I know it's really hard to do, but you can take a deep breath. If you can try to calm and regulate yourself, your child might follow suit. And then be quiet. A lot of times, like I said, you're cueing your child or whoever to try to do something. They're already bombarded with the bright lights and the loud noises and the other screaming children, and you're saying, you know, you're just constantly cueing them verbally, they can't do it, it's too much, you've already told them too much. So a lot of times, sometimes, there's some sessions where I don't say a word the entire session, because they don't need my voice, they need sensory, or they need to organize themselves, and so in order to give them a chance to organize themselves, I need to be quiet and let them lead the way, and I just kind of, you know, help them through that and present opportunities for them to get that sensory information to organize themselves, okay? So, I'm gonna teach the brushing after is there any questions? Does anybody have any real life situations that they've been in or foresee that we could problem solve as a group?
A lot of the strategies are great when they're young. What do you do if they're teenagers and they look at you and go, no?
Yeah.
That's my biggest challenge.
Okay. How old?
15.
Okay. And is he willing to try anything, or have you, nothing?
I mean, sometimes he'll try some things, but you trying a new strategy or to get him to calm down, I don't have to. I don't want to. I don't have to do what you tell me to do. I'm gonna do what I wanna do.
Okay. So, I'm not saying this is gonna work, but maybe leading by example, or showing him that it's calming you to do that, he might then see, you know, I don't know, but, you know, maybe listening to some calming music or something, or setting up the environment different. I don't know exactly what the situation, like, what have you presented to him?
Tried everything.
Yeah.
Tried anything and everything.
So what is the problem? What are you, what's the situation that
It
would
could be any situation.
Does
It could be,
Is he aggressive, or?
he's very aggressive,
Okay.
very violent.
And sometimes as kids have developed these patterns, the behavior, I mean, sounds like there's behavior issues as well, probably.
There weren't when he was younger.
Yeah.
Now that he's older, he'll look at me and say, I'm bigger than you, what are you gonna do? I mean, and he's right, he's
Right.
bigger than me.
Right, right. Yeah, and that's, I feel like that's more behavior. And I really don't know a ton about behavior, I just know to, you know, I lead by
But
example.
the behavior is related to all this.
Right. Yeah, I'm not saying that it's not justified behavior, but I'm not exactly sure how to answer that, so.
Well, I know we were in Iowa City a couple weeks ago, and they definitely told us that puberty will be an extremely hard time. And they're not so sure that my son at age almost 10 is already hitting it, because he had a huge weight gain as well as grew an inch and a half in less than 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah, 10 pounds in an inch and a half. So we might be hitting puberty a little early, but they told us there'd be a lot of changes. But, I mean, like with Malachi last week, he, the fight and flight response to something they asked him to do at school, he accidentally tipped over a cabinet. As a direct result, the pair has a broken leg.
Oh, no.
So we had the police involved and everything. It was a bad situation last week, but, how much of it was, you know, sensory overload, because, I mean, so many of the things that you have up there is definitely what we've got going on.
Right,
But then you've also got the behavior component.
right.
And so it's like, one, we're adjusting medications, but we're also trying to figure out what can we do. So we have a big major meeting next week at school, and a lot of it has to do with consistency between the two homes and getting everybody on the same page and same wavelength. But it's gonna be a major challenge, but what do you do? Because Malachi, I mean, his uncle's 6'5", his dad's 6'2". He's not gonna be a little kid.
No,
You know, he's gonna be a big boy.
yeah,
So we've gotta get it under control now. So. But I can see us being in your spot 5 years if we don't find a way.
absolutely.
Oh, we know the police on a personal basis.
Yeah.
He spent many months at Francis Lauer.
And you see it in the schools.
And
it doesn't
and a
take
lot of
much.
it is sensory overload.
Right.
Yeah, he's looking for something,
Right,
but he can't tell me what he wants. He
Right.
doesn't know.
right.
You know, and a lot of these are great for young kids, they're wonderful. Wish I would have had them when my child was younger. But I'm beyond that now.
Right.
You know, That's what I'm struggling with. Now what do I do?
I think people with their kids are more understanding too, like the teachers and stuff are more willing to work with the situation. Like my daughter, when she gets sent to 11, they try to put her in a situation that they wish she starts saying, and you know, in preschool it's okay because she's small and they know it, but I think if they go older, like you're saying, you're sure the school of it as, you know, what can we do to help fix it, they're going like, it's your problem.
Right.
Pretty much.
Well, I mean,
But it is, I mean, I was in Mill City this week, and a lot of it's sensory. He can't tell me because he doesn't know.
Right.
Do I need, am I frustrated because of the bright lights, or?
You're frustrated, imagine, you know, like, can you imagine, I can't even put myself in the shoes, you know, I'm just.
Yeah, it's tough, right, it is tough, but that's kind of what
Sorry,
I look
have
for
more
is.
for you that, and you know, it's interesting that you bring that up because adolescents are probably the most underserved population when it comes to autism, so, and, you know, I don't know a lot about it, I don't have a lot of experience. I did, when I was in school, I did work with a kid who was very aggressive. I every day had bruises up and down my arms. I would lock myself in the bathroom because he would be attacking me.
Been there, done that.
Yes, yeah, I mean, and so I've lived it, but it wasn't my child, but I was there and I've lived it, you know, I've seen it and I don't know what to tell, you know, it really is just survival, you're just trying to survive.
But you want him, I want him to be able to survive.
Right.
I want him to be able to function, I want him to be able to do all these things. He's smart, but he can't, the sensory stuff is just, he can't regulate it.
Yeah.
But I'm interested in the brushing, I have one of those
Yes.
brushes.
Should we talk about the brushing, does anybody, yes?
Can I ask a question first? So if her son were to have a sensory evaluation, you know,
Mhm. Yep.
sensory processing evaluation,
Yes.
and if you made suggestions, I mean, would you encourage the school, if they
Yes.
found out what set them off?
Absolutely, yeah, that might be a
I feel like
good,
a lot of the kids I would just like, I don't want to send them off for
Right.
sensory processing evaluation,
Right.
but.
right. Well, I think the knowledge is power, you know, the more you know and understand your child, the more you can help them, so, I mean, it's not
Figure out what.
exactly, figure out what might be triggering that, or causing them to behave that way, or, and then obviously you try to change that, or, you know, make it different, so I definitely think having your child or a child that you know with this evaluated, I'm sure he's probably had therapies.
He sees a therapist every week, he's been evaluated by Iowa City twice. He's going in for his third in January, he's been evaluated by Fraser up in Minneapolis.
Has he ever had therapies on a weekly basis, like
He goes every week.
occupational therapy or
No.
physical therapy or anything like that?
Well, funny you should mention that, because I plan on snagging you after
Okay,
December.
okay, excellent. You know, another thing is, at Mercy, we do have therapists that work with sensory processing disorder, but a lot of it is not with adolescents, it's with younger kids. And the physical therapists at Mercy do some of it, but it's mostly the occupational therapists that are doing the sensory and really understand the sensory stuff. Not saying that physical therapists don't, but they don't really dive into that in their treatment. They're looking at your physical function. Can you walk to the door and back? And if you can, you know,
So
Is
it's
the
mostly-
challenge still like the occupational therapy, do you still have to be goal oriented? Because I know Blue Cross Blue Shield,
Yeah.
once you learn how to tie your shoes, brush your teeth, and get dressed,
that's
they boot you.
another, yeah, and
They boot
that is,
Insurance.
that's another kicker, that a lot of times insurances won't pay. You know, we have our arms tied because unless you can pay out of pocket for our services, for the sensory treatment, then, you know, if the kid can walk in, they can dress themselves, they can brush their teeth, they can do all those self-care things, it's really hard to justify treating them, but really, you know they need it, but, yes.
Sometimes if they have a dual diagnosis, you can have them take a look at maybe it's not this part of it, but that part of it, and then
Okay.
So,
Can you give me an example of that?
for instance, you said it was very difficult to have autism, diagnosed or approved under.
Not autism,
Or
sensory
sensory
processing
processing
disorder.
disorder.
Yep.
And, a lot of times, you know, you have, like, for instance, they have, SPD and maybe ODD, ADHD. Well, if their ADHD is severely interfering with their functioning, there's a scale that they use, it's a GAP score. And,
At the insurance place or at their, like,
Or do you mean for the waiver? Because I know with with my son, we can get him on the mental health waiver because we can do the ADHD diagnosis with the autism. But if we didn't have the ADHD, we would get kicked off the waiver.
yeah, they take into certain criteria with different aspects of that.
Okay.
And so it's called general assessment functioning, and it's on a scale from 1 to 100. And if they surpass, the 50% on that, then they can qualify under that type of service
Okay.
instead.
okay.
So that's something that you can look into.
Yeah, definitely.
And then, you know, you can still receive treatment
Right.
for that, but it's under different.
General assessment function.
Yeah.
So.
There's, we've kind of gotten around, well, I have in my practice, because I justify the sensory, like I said, it's
Yeah.
affecting ADLs. It's affecting, ADLs are kind of what we do, activities of daily living. It's affecting your daily function. If you cannot do what you need to do, maybe you physically can brush your teeth, but if you can't organize your body enough to get those things done, then no, you can't do those things.
Even with teachers' recommendations or like your ADA representative. If they recommended the extra therapy and stuff.
If you have a better chance of that, the more resources that you do have,
Right.
then you can put that together, present that to them, you know, have them take into consideration.
She had therapy when she was first came home, she was pregnant. And we had the first 3-4 years of lactating stuff. Never thought about having it again until I kind of looked into a lot of, what you guys do. And a lot of it would work a little bit for her. Because in the school setting, it's,
I think too, having it kind of as a consistent thing for a while, it's not a long-term, the rest of your life kind of thing, but, you know, the therapist can teach the parent how to do these things at home, but even just the education of it, like, you know, what do I even do? You know, how do I even get started? So before we run out of time, I do want to teach this brushing and compression, so we might have to partner up. I do have, I'll just maybe pass out some sheets if you want to, pass them around. This is how to do it. And then I'll pass some brushes around. No, you can do it for as long as they like, you know, like it, want it, or ask for it.
Oh, she
And
can only get 6 months. I think there's like a cutoff and she can.
I don't think so, but. I don't know how many, you might have to share, but I can share them for.
That's okay.
You have one? Okay, okay. You guys, you want to pass them down?
if it was a razor, it would work perfect.
Are we good? Sweet. Okay, so with the brushing, that is just a surgical brush that surgeons use to clean their hands before they go into surgery. So can someone be my guinea pig? Does somebody want to be brushed?
You want to go up and help her? I'll stand up there with you.
Christina.
I'll do it.
How about you brush me? I won't be brushed. Can I steal, can I borrow your brush? Okay, so the key with brushing is you want to apply enough pressure that the bristles bend, okay? And you want to brush
you can brush over clothes, that's fine, or if kids want, you know, you can push their sleeves up or go under their shirt. You only wanna go over an area one time, so you don't wanna be brushing, okay? You just wanna go up, down, okay? So I'm gonna go up, down, I'm gonna make sure I get her palms in the back of her hands, and then I like to go on the other arm, okay? And then I just kind of do an M or a couple zigzags or a W or something on her back, okay? And then you're gonna brush legs, so you'll just go, and I usually stay knee down. It's, you know, the higher up you get, the more sensitive it is, so just stay knee down, and then you can brush the top of the feet and then the bottom of the feet, okay? So that's brushing. Not on the face, not on the temples, okay? If they take the brush their head, their face, that's fine, they're doing it to themselves, okay? Don't brush their face and don't brush their tongue, okay? So arms, back, legs, feet, okay? And make sure you're applying enough pressure that the bristles are bending and they're getting that sensation. So, any questions about the brush?
This might sound a bit outdated, but remember about the fabric thing? This has been the case for a while.
Yeah?
These guys and fabric has been worn down, and this is the, it has that.
She
Oh,
carries
that's
them
soft.
from the NICU, but she carries them naturally.
That's
And
awesome.
it's also orange.
Uh-huh, awesome. Those are really soft. I want one. Okay, so then after the brushing, it's recommended that you follow the brushing with joint compressions, okay? So all of this is based on a protocol. It's called the Patricia Wilbarger protocol. I put that on the bottom. Her protocol is very intense. It's to desensitize someone that has hypersensitivity. I don't use it like the protocol says you should. I just think that brushing any kind of sensation on your arm, you know, you can use fabrics or whatever, is helpful, and you can try it. I don't think the protocol is every 1.5 to 2 hours you need to be brushing, and it's pretty intense. So I just don't do that. I just, you know, teach people how to use the brush as a calming technique. And then, yeah, you want to follow the brushing with joint compressions, and so I'm going to demonstrate joint compressions. And what that is I'm just giving pressure at each joint. So I just take one, so I'm going to do these joints here on her hand. So I'm going to hold below and above each joint, and I'm just kind of pressing together. And I can, if afterwards, if you want to feel how hard I'm pressing, or if you want me to do this to you, I can, so you know what it feels like. And then, so I do about 5 to 10 on each joint, and I move up to the wrist. Okay, and then I'm going to go, just go ahead and relax your arm. Yep. I'm gonna
She's
push.
already relaxed you already.
I'm going to push at the elbow, and then I'm going to push at the shoulder. Okay, and then you can push down on the shoulders, you can push the top of the head, okay? And you can do, and then you can do the legs too, so you push the toes together. The bottom of the feet, sometimes I always ask, but if kids sometimes like you to hit the bottom of their feet, it feels kind of good. So you just hit, and if they want it harder, then hit them harder, but always ask
What
first.
is
but-
it? Because I saw Christina do it. What is it with the bottom of the feet?
It feels good though, doesn't it?
Baby massage up in the NICU.
Yeah.
When I came from her and stuff. But the shoulder thing, that is more sensitive when she's,
Uh-huh.
you can't touch it. And I
It's
think
like right or up, is that
it would feel good to, you know, if I could start doing that when
Yeah.
she would. Because I go to like even just console and rub her neck if she.
Yeah, and I wonder if it's that light touch that's maybe
That's
that.
what I'm.
It's
So
the
maybe
light
if you're coming, if you,
Harder.
you know, I'm gonna touch you now on your back, and you just touch, you don't
The way
don't come after, yes, yep, yep, and then give that
She
pressure.
don't let you like hug her or.
Right,
Okay.
right, well, it's kind of,
Right.
you know, yeah. So the joint compressions then, toes, bottom of the feet, knees, and then you can kind of, just down in the chair, and I'll just show them how you push. You can kind of then push, yeah, it doesn't matter. You can kind of take their legs and kind of push their knees back into their hips, okay? So, or we'll push their upper leg right into the hips. So that's joint compressions. Does anybody have questions on that? like I said, if you wanna know the pressure you wanna use, or try them out, or you want me to do it to you, we can do that, so.
Madeline, can I watch her do it on your shoulders?
Go ahead. So, before we do that, I'm gonna say, if you need to contact me, that's my email address. And then also, I mentioned before, I'm not full-time at Mercy anymore, but there is an occupational therapist, her name is Lauren, and she does the sensory profile and the sensory diets and all of the stuff that I talked about, and a lot of this stuff came from Mercy, so if you have any questions, you can call there, or you can email me, or talk to me afterwards, so.
And we also have a lot of the sensory stuff. Some of this stuff is ours here from our resource library. We have a lot of other things too. So if anybody wants to check it out or borrow it, we're happy to loan them out so you can try it with your kids before you go and buy it or do things that way.
Anything else?
So all of this is free game, so if you wanna play with any of it, try it, whatever, go for it.
And I have some copies of the presentation too.
All right, you know what, I'm gonna,
Cutting work to do.
okay. Okay with that?
I probably
All right.
don't believe it.
I know, but
didn't put it in my
program
phone.
it, yeah.
Ready?
Did you hear about the cop?
Oh, I didn't.
Oh, yeah.
I heard about the broken leg.
Yeah, they recently called the school resource officer. So he said she didn't press charges. Don't know why.
It's coming to that.
Oh, you know what, I need to shut this off. I'm sorry, hold on one second.